started the show off with an upward right away.
Yeah, listen on TuneIn. Don't listen on the Spreaker because my bandwidth sucks, and TuneIn will correct that. Spreaker will not. So, or TalkStream Live. I find TuneIn is the best. You can still go in the Spreaker chat room. Just listen to it off TuneIn, and everything will be fine. So, I don't know. Could be just aliens trying. It's probably just aliens,
though, right?
You know.
Right, Wolfman.
It's probably just a figment of your imagination.
What? Why are you broadcasting out of a motel room?
Oh, because
places?
I'm actually in the process of moving, and I couldn't get my internet hooked up quick enough. So I just went and booked a motel room so that I had internet. And every show I have to reset everything up. It's a lot of work.
Well, at least you're here.
Yeah, man. I'm a radio wave warrior. I don't give up.
Nope. We got it just in the nick of time too. I hope it's better than last night. Hopefully.
Well, I find when a show starts good, then it just I'm better. If it starts bad, it sets me off, and
you get a little derailed.
I get derailed and negative.
You did good though last night.
I don't give up, and I try to sound positive.
That was a good show. You did. It was great.
Yeah, I booked the hotel room to do my internet show, and that's why you guys need to give me some donations, because I'm moving, and I really need them now. I really need some donations now, because this is costing me big time. Yeah. Anyone that can go to Monster Castle Paranormal, and I don't care if you throw me $5 or something, I can really use it today. No shit. I wouldn't ask. Yeah, much appreciated. Hey, what's new, Darren? Anything new?
There was something I wanted to talk about. Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh yeah, you sound fine. I did some really magical things with 2 computers, and I got this working.
I was going to talk about Travis Walton's talk the other day. They went back up to the site where the UFO was, and all the trees had grown about as fast as any other whole forest. And it burnt down, so they cut the trees in half, and I hope I put a picture on 47 Talk on Twitter.
Yeah.
And it shows the moment that spacecraft was there, the tree rings were 3 times as big as they are out. It's really cool. Isn't that weird?
Yes.
I don't know exactly why. Is it radiation? Pine trees for some reason.
Man, just when this is getting good, now your Skype is starting to get shit. Just when the story's getting good. What are you doing different over there? Anything?
That happened today too.
Okay, I'm gonna try something.
I'm talking about Travis Walton and then.
Yeah, as soon as you started talking, okay. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hang up on you and then call me right back. Okay. All right. You hear me?
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna hang up on you right now and call me right back, and then it should fix it. In the meantime, our guest tonight is a ghost professor. And an expert and an investigator on the paranormal, and specializing in shapeshifters and spirits from beyond. Let's see if I can get him in here. Okay, here comes Darren back. Let's let Darren finish what he was saying first, and then we'll introduce the guest.
Radio check. Can you guys hear me?
Oh yeah, you sound great now.
Hello.
Ophidian.
Hello.
Yeah, you sound great. Hello, Darren.
Okay.
Darren, we can hear you.
I can barely hear you, but
Strange.
you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
I'm having trouble hearing you, but you can hear me fine. Okay. Anyways, the trees they went to the exact location of where the UFO went, and all those trees that were around in a ring around that ship have all just grown like crazy since that day. Exact days where the ring started growing 3 times as fast. It's really cool. And they're all trying to figure it out.
So what you're saying is where
It might be radiation.
where the thing abducted him and where that radiation field hit him and hurt him, the trees are all growing bigger and taller than everything else around it. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, so like yes, and then when there was a forest fire just a couple of years ago, and so the trees died, so they cut them, they cut them so that you could see the rings and start growing, and that is the exact time that happened.
That is freaky.
It's really cool. I know. So that was something new I learned.
You were warbling. That's what Eric says. You're warbling.
Oh boy.
But Eric, don't listen on Spreaker. Seriously. When I'm broadcasting with a low bandwidth like this, it's better to use TuneIn. It will sound way better if you switch over to TuneIn to listen to, or just go to TuneIn and go to KTLKTheFringe.fm. All right, can you dig it? This is the Wolf Man. That's a cool story, though, Darren. Even though we are having trouble with Skype, the story came through either way, and it's really groovy. So the trees. What about the rings? I couldn't quite understand what you said about the rings in the trees when they cut them.
Well, when you look at a tree and you can, right? Well, where you start in the middle, and then every year it goes. You understand? How a tree grows.
Yeah. I'm gonna try boosting.
Hello.
I'm just trying to boost you up a little bit here because you're.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, but yeah.
Okay. Well, anyways, they were saplings when he was there, or there were small trees, and they're maybe 10 years old. So there's like 10 rings that are fairly close together, and then right when it happened, if you look at the outside of the cut, then the rings started growing. The trees started growing way faster, so the rings are wider. From the moment that craft landed. And I added a picture there, and you can check it out, and it'll show you the exact date, of the abduction and when it happened on the tree, and then beyond that. It's crazy. It's really neat.
Yeah, it's still.
Got it?
Yeah.
Get the picture.
I get the picture, man.
Did you see the picture?
Yeah, if you look on hashtag 47talk, you can see the picture.
Get the picture.
Yeah. Hashtag 47talk on Twitter.
Oh, you see the tree and how?
Yeah. I see it now.
You see the inner part of the tree, so that was the tree that was there. Got abducted.
I'm blowing it
and
up.
And then the ring in the middle.
I'm waiting for it to blow up. I think I know what's wrong. I think I got to close that window right there. I won't be able to look at the pictures, that's all. I think that's what's screwing you. I'm going to try closing that. Everyone else can look at the pictures. Oh, see? As soon as I close that window, it's better, isn't it?
I think so, a little bit. I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, try to not use any internet except for the Skype if you can help
That worked. That worked. I figured it out. See, because it cuts... What I'm doing is I'm allowing the computer to use all of its CPU power to compensate for the bad bandwidth, and it works. And now it's just an experiment, and so I come up with this on my own, and it works. Just because.
All right.
I did it. Everybody, can you dig it? All right. I'm don't even have my effects panel out yet. What the hell's wrong?
Let's not start slapping each other on the backs too quick. You never know with Skype. Should we introduce our guest?
Yes, but wait till I roll the intro. Hang on.
Okay.
A second here. I got a groovy guest intro jingle here. If I can get this going. Here we go. John Kachuba, you are the next guest on Monster Castle Paranormal Radio. And come on down.
I'm down, man.
Dig it. Down and groovy. This is the Ghost Professor himself, folks. I don't know if you've ever heard him before. This is going to be a good show.
Have you been on other shows before, Ghost Professor?
Hang on a sec. People are having trouble finding us on TuneIn Radio. You can find us by going to thefringe.fm, search that, or you can search Monster Castle Paranormal. There's two ways to listen to us on TuneIn. So there you go. And also, I don't have a post office box number. We don't have that in Canada. The only way you can donate is using the I got PayPal on the website, monstercastleparanormal.com. Okay, sorry for interrupting, guys.
That's okay. Everyone has to take a drink now, though.
Oh, yeah. Every time I interrupt, it is time to have a drink of your alcoholic beverage, folks.
John, can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, good. Have you been on any other shows before? You wrote 5 books. I'm sure you have, huh?
Yeah. My first book came out in 2003, so that's like 14 years ago, and I've been on scores of podcasts and radio shows, and like Wolfman, I've done some from motel rooms too.
All right. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in New England. I grew up in Connecticut. I live in Cincinnati now, and I've been in Ohio for probably 25 years at this point.
Are there more ghosts in New England or Ohio?
I got that question a few times, and the thing most people expect is to say New England because, it was settled in the 17th century and all that. And yeah, there's a lot of history in New England, but I'll tell you, I've written 2 books about Ohio, and there's a lot out here in the Midwest. And I mean, there's a lot anywhere if you start looking at it, but the Midwest has a pretty rich ghost history, I think. And I'm not really sure why it seems to be so centered here, but there seems to be a lot of it.
I didn't know that. That's interesting. I wonder if it's
I have
Native
2
Americans.
books about Ohio, and I have one about Illinois. And then the same publisher that I worked with for those books brought out one for Indiana, and there's one for Kentucky, so one for Michigan. So, there's a lot out here.
That's cool. So your books are about different locations and just ghost stories? What are the names of your books?
Yeah, each one of the books I wrote, there was a series that came out from the publisher at the time that brought them out originally. It was called Emmis Publishing, and the series was called America's Haunted Road Trip. And the idea was just to do Midwest states, but the books became so popular that we started doing other states in the United States. And so I wrote some of the books for the series. I wrote, like I said, the 2 Ohio books and the Illinois book. But then I also was the editor for the rest of the series. So I hired writers in different states to write about their particular state using the same kind of formula that I did. And what that meant was that each one of the writers had to physically go to these locations, spend as much time as they could there themselves, and then write about it. So they're writing from a first-person perspective, or they're talking to people that had experiences at these locations. So they're not just stories, pulled off the internet or something like that. All the writers of the series, myself included, did all the investigation firsthand. So
that's great.
It's really, it's a cool series because it's all, like I say, it's all firsthand observation, And my tendency, my own style is, I always inject a little humor in my stuff too. So you get some nice stories.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes a little joke. Yeah, exactly.
You got to do that. Yeah. Like, that's our specialty on this show is a little bit of paranormal and mix a little bit of comedy in with it. And there you go.
Yeah, you got it.
It's I'm an experiencer too, but that works for me. I joke about myself. You got to be able to make fun of yourself, and if you can't do that, don't bother making fun of other people, because that just turns you into I don't know. There's many words for it, but
I hear you. I hear all those words.
John, what made you first interested in ghosts? Did you see one, or what was the first thing that happened to you that made you interested in it?
Yeah, like I said, I grew up in Connecticut, and I've always been interested in history. In fact, I write a lot of stuff. I mean, I have a historical novel that came out last year, so I write a lot of different things. But I've always been interested in history, and as I've studied history, you always get some of the let's call it folklore. You get some of the tall tales, and you get ghost stories and all that. And the ghost stories just always grab my attention. And growing up in Connecticut, I had the occasion to meet Ed and Lorraine Warren, who, probably a lot of your audience and you guys might know, in the United States, we sort of call them the godfather and godmother of American ghost hunting. They're the ones that investigated the Amityville horror in New York, which, the movie was out and the book was out. So I had a chance to meet them.
You are lucky, sir, to meet them.
Yeah, well, I lived in the same town for a couple years, and they invited me to their house one time, and I went up there and had a chance to sit down and talk to them. In fact, in one of my books called Ghost Hunters, I have a chapter about the Warrens, and I have two different interviews that I did with them. One early on when Ed Warren was still with us, and then the second one, he was still alive. He had suffered a major stroke, and that interview occurred probably just about a month before he passed away. So they're great interviews, though, because they take place in their home. You actually see what their house is like, and it's pretty cool, I thought. So they kind of turned me on to things. What happened was, I was in a place in Connecticut that's called, it's nicknamed Dudleytown, and it's an old 18th century settlement up on a mountain in Connecticut that is now nothing but just old, cellar holes and wells and stuff like that. It's all grown over. But the nickname for the place is called Dark Entry, which is a cool name, isn't it? Dark Entry. You gotta love that.
There's a Bauhaus. Remember that band Bauhaus? They got a song called Dark Entries.
Do they really?
Yeah.
I ended up writing a novella called Dark Entry based on that. But the story was that the people that lived in this community, over a century or so, there was a rash of sort of people going crazy and committing suicide and committing murders, and it was nuts. And some people think that there was actually some environmental poisoning that actually created this, but other people said no, it's the result of an old Native American curse on the area. So it was just really rich in all these kinds of ghost stories. So I went up there, and I was just checking it out for the historical reasons. I didn't know much about the ghost stuff, and I was taking pictures. And this was the day, I'll give you an idea how old I am. I was using a camera, and my camera had something inside it they call film. Did you ever hear of film?
I remember.
Yeah, and you take this stuff and you wind it on what they call a spool in your camera. It was
that
like
black
weird,
sticky stuff, and you put it in
it was
dark
weird
room.
Stuff. Anyway, so I was taking these pictures, and when I got them back from the from the developer, I was taking a look at one of these cellar holes, and it's all overgrown with weeds and trees and stuff like that. And as I'm looking at this thing, I'm thinking, wow, that looks like a face. It's like a little face looking at me out of the wall, right? So I enlarged the photo, and I thought, yeah, as I enlarge it, I'm going to discover that it was a bunch of leaves together that looked like a face, or something like that. So I enlarged it; it looked more like a face. I enlarged it again.
Whoa! What does that remind you of, Darren?
It just kept getting to be more of a face. It wasn't leaves. So I got these photos, and I called the Warrens. This is the first time. I had never met them before. And I called them, and I introduced myself on the phone and said, hey, I was up at Dudleytown. I said, I know that you two have been up there several times, and I got some really cool pictures, and I'd like you to take a look at them, if you wouldn't mind. And they were so generous and so courteous, and they said, oh, yeah, why don't you bring them over to our house? We'd love to take a look at it. Okay. So I did, and I showed them these photos, and they said, oh, man, yeah, that's a face. You've got an anomaly there, And then they proceeded to take out this album of, I don't know, 100 or more photos they had taken at Dudleytown over the years. And they had all kinds of, mists and red blobs and all kinds of anomalies in their photos. So that was the first time I got to meet them. And they really kind of triggered my interest more in the paranormal. Like I said, I always had an interest in the ghost stories and everything. But they pushed me more in terms of not just folklore or folk tales, but maybe actual events, actual happenings, actual paranormal events. So I got more interested in that way and studied more. So the question was, how did I get started? It was a long way around, but I credit the Warrens with getting me into it.
Aren't the Warrens the one that are in like the Annabelle story and all the new movies and stuff?
Oh yeah,
that's correct.
Conjuring. Yeah, The Conjuring. You mean?
Yeah. Did you see the doll?
Well, I won't say much about the movie, but yes, they are featured. Well, there's actors and actresses playing their roles in those movies. Yeah, right.
Was there a real?
They
doll?
had at their home. They had at their house in the backyard. They had this barn, and in the barn they had all kinds of objects that they had accumulated over the years. Possessed things, tulpas, things like that. They had actually the Annabelle doll was in there and all that stuff. So it's pretty cool.
Can you get into specifics? What else is in there? I'm just dying to know. My daughter loves those movies. And
yeah.
It like
I don't remember,
stuff.
but it was certainly like the doll, and there was other things like that. Most of what they had in there were just objects that they believed at one time, in some case that they were working with, either had like a spirit attached to it, or as I mentioned, a tulpa, which I don't know if your audience knows what that is, but basically it's something that's created just out of whole cloth. It's been said that like monks in Tibet, places like that, can meditate for years and years and years, over and over and over on a particular image, a particular idea of a being, and that's simply through their meditation that they can bring that being into existence, which is pretty incredible. So that's what a tulpa is.
But it's made out of cloth?
Well, yeah, exactly. It's a thought brought to reality.
Isn't that they're like an elf or gnome that originates in Denmark? A tulpa, or am I mixed up with something?
Well, I don't know.
That's a tompe. That's a tompe. I'm thinking of something else. A tulpa, I'm not really sure.
Tulpa.
So where does that originate from?
As far as I know, the origination is like in the Himalayas among the Tibetans and Tibet and Nepal, places like that.
Yeah, I've heard it before, but I've always wondered what that is, and I think I had it mixed up with something else. But,
well, as a daily
John, what
practice,
is the
I
real-
meditate, but 20 minutes, half an hour a day. These are people that are in meditation, and with one idea in mind, one thought in mind, which is pretty incredible. If you can do this, and they say that they have brought into existence, brought into reality that thought. So that's pretty incredible, which just gives you an idea of the power of the mind and what our brain can do, and we don't know half the things our brain is capable of doing.
Everybody in the chat room saying it's all pareidolia, and you can see faces. You can make faces out of anything from toast to clouds. But one time when I was a kid, I seen this
Right.
reminds me of a time when my brother and I witnessed the tree leaves actually bend and take shape into a very detailed sculpture, basically of a face, very detailed. You could see the mouth moving and the lips moving, eyes opening and closing. It was not pareidolia. It was definitely not.
Well, that's
pareidolia.
why that was my first thought. When I had that photo years ago. I mean, I said, yeah, I'm sure. It looks that way, but yeah, it's just leaves laying exactly right and looking that way, and the shadows and everything else. But as I kept enlarging it, instead of becoming more ambiguous or amorphous and saying, oh yeah, it is just leaves, no, it was taking more definition, which was exactly the opposite of what I expected it to do.
So that was the first thing that got you started. Like, wow, I'm into this. Is that
Yeah.
the first thing that happened?
Yeah.
Wow. What did the
Yeah, I would say
Annabelle
so.
doll look like?
What's that?
What did the Annabelle doll look like in reality?
It looks sort of like kind of like a Raggedy Ann doll, but it doesn't have like that red kind of hair and stuff. But it's creepy. I mean, I think there's actual photos of it on the internet. I mean, I think there's real photos of it. I'm pretty sure I've seen some on there.
Well, I'm pretty sure
yeah,
that
it's a
our
weird looking
listeners
doll.
could.
I mean, I've got a bunch of little grandkids, and some of them are girls, and I wouldn't give any one of them a doll that looked like that.
I'm pretty sure that somebody in the chat room or on hashtag 47talk, one of our listeners could probably pull a picture of that and put it on there for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've seen it before. It is creepy.
So, the Warrens' nephew is Johnny Zaffis, and he's been on TV with his show and everything. And he too has a little museum of artifacts that he's collected in his investigations that have had spirit attachments or whatever too. He also lives in Connecticut.
Oh yeah.
Did the Warrens have any children?
I don't think so. I should know that, but I don't think they did. Johnny was their nephew. I think they were childless. I'm pretty sure they were.
Yeah.
But they were really nice people.
They were. Lorraine, of course, is still alive, so I don't want to talk about her in the past tense. They were very nice. Lorraine was kind of like a school marm, as they say, like the sweet little old lady who was very nice, very polite, very cordial. Ed was different. Ed was a big burly guy when he was healthy, a big husky burly guy, but really nice. They're both very nice people. Their approach to the paranormal, though, was a little bit different than mine, in the sense that they were both very devout Catholics. And for them, the paranormal always had a strong religious aspect to it. It wasn't just like, okay, here's a ghost in the house and it's causing problems, we need to get rid of it or whatever. It was more like, no, this is
More like demons.
a demon, a demonic spirit, with the devil. Yeah, they were more like that. I mean, certainly they had cases that they would say, no, it's a ghost, but they seem to really be looking more at the aspect of good versus evil, God versus the devil. That was pretty much the basis for how they would proceed in investigations, which is not the way I think, but that's the way they thought.
So, how long after you saw the face at the, what was the place called? Dudley?
Well, it's called Dudleytown. It was named after the family that settled there in the 18th century were the Dudleys. And they were descended from the Dudleys in England. I forgot which one it was, but the Dudleys in England had a pretty bad history in terms of a lot of them were executed by various kings.
So
people thought that the family at the same time, there were Native American tribes there, and one of their leaders was killed. So they think that may have been also sort of a second curse.
Oh man, I hate this hotel room. I'm gonna blow it up, man. That's it. I'm gonna blow this friggin' place right up, I think.
Why don't you play a song and reconnect with him?
Oh, is it? Maybe I should do that. Yeah, because you started out really clear, and now it's, I don't know. Give John.
We had a little Skype issues about 30 seconds ago.
Yeah, I don't know. It might.
I'm here.
Yeah, it sounds fine now. If it keeps doing it though, I'll quit the Skype and then I'll reopen it, and it should fix that.
So we kind of missed about the American Indians in the Dudley. It was kind of not coming through. Could you repeat that?
Really? Yeah, sure. So, so the Dudley family that came, I don't know how much you heard, but the Dudleys back in England had a bad history with various monarchs, and a couple of them ended up with their heads on the chopping block. So people said that the family had some curse laid on them, which apparently followed them to New England when they settled. But it was also a Native American chieftain that apparently was killed in that area, and whether it was by a Dudley or not, nobody really knows. But apparently they say, well, that's also a curse on the area because of that. So, they're cursed twice, I guess.
The double curse area. Did you get any other pictures besides the one? Or did you write a book on that? Or
I didn't get that question.
He was asking if you got any other pictures besides that one.
Oh, no, not from Dudleytown. In fact, I haven't been back up there since that time. So, no.
Yeah.
What was your...
Go ahead, dude.
What was the next thing you got interested in after that? That started you on your way? What did you look into then? And
I mean, I just kept doing a lot of reading about different locations and things like that. And when I came out to Ohio, I was basically approached by an editor who was thinking about some series that he wanted to do for their publishing house. And he had known my writing from some other things that I had done. And we talked about some ideas, and I said, well, I'm really interested in ghosts. And he said, whoa, ghosts? We hadn't thought about that. He said, the ghosts in Ohio? I said, well, why don't I find out? So it was that simple. And so basically he said, well, go ahead. So, I had a contract to start looking for ghosts in Ohio. So I just started doing that. And it took off from that point. Like I said, there were 2 books in Ohio, a book in Illinois, a book called Ghost Hunters.
Where did you first go? How'd you start? Did you start the library, or how'd you do that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I did some of the basic, really easy stuff. Go on the internet and do top haunted places in Ohio, something dumb like that. Because I wanted to at least get a start somewhere, and quite honestly, I didn't know where to go. So I did that to find out some common places, and I went to these places. But what I found out was that I went to them, and I would start talking to people and interviewing people in the area or people at that location, and they would always point me somewhere else. They'd say, yeah, okay, this is great, but do you know about this place? Do you know about the bar down the street? Or do you know about that, So I would go to those places, and then I also connected with a lot of different ghost, paranormal research groups in Ohio. I mean, I'd look those up, and I'd just send emails to folks and say, "Hey, what's going on? What are you looking at?" And so they'd invite me a lot of times to go to different locations, and so I did investigations with a lot of different groups because I would be there with them. They'd invite me to go to a place, and so I'd go. So what I tried to do in my books was I tried to write about places that were not as well known, perhaps, as others.
Yeah.
So you would you'd interview somebody and then just write down their story.
Yeah, because what I would do is, I'd go to a place. I'll give you an example. I would go to, let's say, a haunted hotel.
First, before you went to the haunted hotel, though, didn't you usually go there and then set up some leaves to look like a face?
exactly. Oh,
yeah,
man,
I figured it out.
You found out how
I'm
it
on
worked.
it. I'm on you, man.
Yeah, and I'd wear a sheet too.
In case that would
things
get
got
me.
wrong.
That would fool me. I bet you a-hole skeptic would run away screaming.
But this is America, so I'd make sure that the sheet didn't have like a pointy head to it, so I don't want to get
I never
confused.
put sheet on my head.
But
I would never put sheet on my head.
Stephen King wrote, I guess it was a short story about a hotel room. I forgot what it was called, but it was the title was The Room Number, and it became a movie. Man, I can't think of what that was, what the name of that movie was. Anyway, in that movie, it was about a writer who writes ghost stuff. And he goes to a hotel, and he checks in at the hotel, and he says, what room is the haunted room? And the clerk says, oh, that's number 4. So he says, okay, put me up to number 4. And he stays there all night. That was me. That was exactly what I would do. So I go to a place like that, like a haunted hotel, and ask if there was a haunted room. And if they said yes, I'd say, okay, can I stay there? And if it was free, they'd say yes. So I'd stay in the haunted room overnight, whatever, do a little investigation, just stay there, just be there. And then I'd write about all that. But then in addition to my experiences or whatever happened or didn't happen, I would also talk to like the desk clerk, the security guard, the housekeepers, if there was a maintenance guy, anybody that worked there, and say, hey, what have you experienced? Have you seen anything? And so I get all their stories as well as whatever, happened or what didn't happen. So it's pretty cool because it came right from the people that are there, because I was doing these things relatively short term. I mean, I couldn't stay at the hotel for a week or something. So I'd be there like one night. Well, maybe I'd be lucky the people that are there all the time and get there. So I think
Can you tell us a few of the scariest stories you found from people that are in your first book?
Yeah. There was a hotel here in Cincinnati, and it was called the Vernon Manor, which now the building is still there, but it's now been taken over by a hospital, so it's no longer open to the public. But at the time that I was writing about it, it was still a hotel. It was open to the public. Years ago, the Beatles stayed there. They actually toured Cincinnati, and they stayed at the hotel. So they have the suite where the Beatles stayed has all this Beatlemania stuff in it that they kept there. It's a cool place. Anyway, so one of the stories that came out of that was that I got this from a guy who was a security guard, and he said that he was notified. Somebody called down and said that they heard what sounded like somebody screaming in one of the rooms upstairs. So, of course, he comes up to check it out, and sure enough, he goes on and he hears like this screaming coming from one of the rooms, and he's there. He listens to it, and he has a key. And he gets in there. He calls the desk. He says, there's somebody screaming up here, but I'm going to go in, So he grabs his key. He opens the door. And the screaming stops immediately, and there's nothing in there. But the door is all scratched up on the inside, right?
Oh.
And it hadn't been before. But there was nobody in the room.
Yeah.
That's
I like
cool.
that. I like that. Cool.
Now, there was a story that there was a woman who committed suicide. I don't know if it was exactly that room or one nearby, but it was on that same floor. And it was years ago when she did it, but she jumped out a window and killed herself, which to me wouldn't explain necessarily screaming and scratching on the door, but that was a pretty cool story anyway.
I dig that story, man.
Wasn't there a video one time on YouTube about a security guard that went up and they were screaming in this room?
Oh, I saw that. Yeah, I saw that one. And when he went in, didn't he say, like, wasn't all the furniture piled up or something like that?
Yeah, the carpet was ripped up and everything, and nobody was in there.
I don't know if that's been debunked or not, though. I thought somebody said that they figured out that was just all put together. I mean, I don't know. It looked great. It looked real, but, just looking at YouTube, who knows? Yeah,
no kidding. It's better to do what you do, just go into the person and saw it firsthand.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's the way I feel. Plus, you have experiences, too. I mean, there was a place up in Toledo, which I don't know how far Toledo would be from where you guys are in Ontario. I don't know Ontario very well, but I mean, Toledo's getting up to Canada.
I'm in Ontario, and also God of Thunder says John Cusack, room 1408. That sounds familiar.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's right, Cusack. Yep. Well, the funny thing, what I liked about that movie was that when it begins, you see him. He goes up to that room, and he's sitting on a bed, and he's just like bouncing a ball against the wall all night, just sitting there waiting for something to happen. And next morning he checks out, and the clerk says something like, "Well, how'd it go?" And he said, "It was great. Nothing happened." And so he wrote about that because I think that that so often that happens. Nothing happens. I've been on so many investigations overnight where you spend the entire night, someplace, and you have all this gear and everything hooked up and wired and all, and you just sit there all night long in the dark and nothing happens. Then, the minute you leave, somebody will say, "You won't believe what happened when you walked out the door."
This room I'm in at this hotel here, which is the Super 8 in Guelph, Ontario. I'm not going to tell you the room number, but I will tweet it tomorrow. But I had some shadow people, and it overwhelmed me last night after the show in this room. I couldn't sleep. They were just all over. I just dancing. I had to turn my flashlight on and point it at the corner, and so that they would go away.
It must be
John, I work at a hotel that's haunted. Oh, go ahead.
All hotels have got to be haunted. They got to be.
What were you asking, John?
Well, what's that?
Were you asking Wolfman a question about the shadow people?
No, I was just saying that they must be following him. That's about all I can think of.
No, that's
I mean, Super 8.
I work at a super old hotel, and we have a haunted room. And 2 or 3 times, people have checked out at like 4 a.m, and both times they saw the same thing. They saw an old couple.
In a lot of my books, I've probably written about, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 different hotels just in Ohio, and mostly they're not so much Super 8. I mean, it's possible. I mean, but they're mostly older ones, that have been around for a while, a century or something like that, But there's a cool one up in
1911.
There's one in Paynesville, Ohio, which is up by the Cleveland area, northeast, extreme northeast Ohio, up by the lake. And it's called Riders Inn, and it was built in 1812. It only has about 4 rooms, but it's an old place. And supposedly, the ghost there is the ghost of the first innkeeper's wife, Sarah. And people have seen her, sort of float floating around in an old kind of 18th century kind of nightgown kind of thing. So my wife and I were up there, and we were checking the place out. So I said, well, what's the worst room? What's supposed to be the haunted room? They said, oh, we call it Sarah's room. I said, okay. So my wife and I stayed up there, and it was kind of creepy because they had this old nightgown on display. It was an old antique nightgown, and they had it standing up on like this, not like a coat rack, but it was standing up that looked like a person was in it. And they had it right at the foot of the bed, So you wake up in the middle of the night and you look up and there's this thing at the foot of the bed. It's like, don't do that to me.
Yeah.
But
I
but
don't-
something
Did
was
you
really,
see anything?
but it was weird. We were there at a time of year, it was sort of like spring. So the place does have air conditioning, but the air conditioning wasn't on yet. It wasn't that hot. And they had shut the heat off because it wasn't that cold. So there wasn't any air running. So there wasn't